Alright, boys. So, in this video, as the title boldly says, you're going to have a retard telling you that physicists are wrong. But, hear me out. Because for the life of me, again, granted, I am not the smartest dude in the world. If I'm going to chat about this with a physicist, quantum physicist, cosmology, whatever, they're going to run circles around me, mathematically, with these concepts. Yeah? Fair. But there's a few things that no matter which way you slice it, as far as I can see, I might be retarded, but I do think that I have a somewhat rational mind. I can follow logic and reason. And no matter which way you slice it, before science can even get started, as far as I can tell, you need at least 4 miracles before you can even get started. So, what are they? First of all, everything coming from nothing. Yeah? That might be an oversimplification. But at the end of the day, Big Bang theory, still a theory by the way, might have mathematics and evidence to back it up, but it's a theory, and it posits that everything in the known universe came from nothing. Or, that's okay, they say, but that's an overgeneralized simplification and blah, blah. Yeah, brother. So it didn't explode. Maybe they say that's outdated. It just used to be existing in some very small, infinitesimally small point compared to what it is now. Extremely hot matter and all of the elements, core elements were there. And then at some point, it decided, for no reason at all, to start expanding. And it hasn't stopped since. This is my face. What are you talking about? You don't invoke any intention. There's no intentional mind present. It's just a small point that starts expanding. It has everything in it, and then it starts expanding. Why? In all directions, all around. Why? So that's the first miracle you need. I'm going to oversimplify it. Everything comes from nothing first. Then you've got entropy, second law of thermodynamics. Again, barely understand these concepts, but I understand them well enough on a mathematical level, but I understand them well enough rationally speaking. Everything's expanding in all directions, and then within that expansion, things start deciding to reverse entropy and coalesce together to form galaxies and stars and planets and all this, yeah? And then, as the planets are formed, then entropy goes back to, it resumes its normal order of business, which is okay, so I should explain that. Entropy is order descending into chaos. That's what we observe all around us. If I take a glass from my kitchen and I throw it on the floor, what have I got? I've got a broken glass. If I wait 100 billion years, is the broken shards ever going to reform themselves to be back to a glass? Or better yet, a elephant? No, they're not. It's going to become dust. That's the best it's ever going to get. But somehow, from this infinitesimally small point, everything expanding in all directions, and then they start to coalesce to form gigantic bodies, which then, to get into the next miracles, is going to start producing elements or organizing elements, whatever you want to say. You want to pin me down to the science of it, brother? Yeah, enjoy it. Go hard. But logically speaking, how is this process taking place? And more importantly, why? Not just how, why? All accidental, yeah? If you want to invoke secular humanism, which is basically scientism, let's say. So, you got those first 2 miracles, yeah? Everything coming from nothing, or everything expanding from a tiny point into infinity. Then you've got entropy coalescing to form everything that we know of, and now we observe. And by the way, the only way that they can convince us of this bullshit is by invoking time horizons that are just so mind-bogglingly long, we can't argue against it. And they say, yeah, the maths makes sense. Okay, fair enough. Maybe the maths works. It doesn't. I'll get into this over the course of many videos, I guess. It doesn't make sense in all realms. There's a lot of issues, but let's say that the maths makes sense. Does that by default mean that it's a mutually exclusive outcome? So that because the maths makes sense and that they've posited that it's coming from a Big Bang, for example, that's the only possibility? No, of course not. An intentional mind could have created that, could have set that whole entire chain of events off into action. But that's a topic for another day. We've got two miracles, yeah? So everything coming from nothing, entropy, expanding, order descending into chaos, then coming back to order and then going back into chaos. Then you've got a rock, basically, a hot ball of lava existing in an infinite vacuum, and then, or whatever, fusion ball, and then you've got then you've got that turning into rock, and then you've got rock. So geology, you've got inorganic matter somehow giving birth to organic matter. So that's miracle number 3. Then from organic matter, and by the way, look, I'll be completely transparent. Science claims to have an answer for all of these, based on, like I said, gigantic time horizons that we can't even conceive of, and having it's called affirming the consequent. Yeah, it's a logical fallacy. You're basically deciding that the reason and then forming the evidence around it to fit. Okay, it's overwhelming research, overwhelming evidence. Yeah. I know. I understand. I'm gonna have, if this ever catches a big audience, I'm gonna have science dorks in there in my comments blowing me up. I get it. Yeah, but this one, nobody has an answer for, and the only way that they can explain this is to again invoke unimaginable time horizons. We just need more time to figure it out. So we've had 80 billion years. What is it? The Earth's, I don't know, 13 billion years. I deliberately delete some of this information from my mind because it annoys me. But so the fourth miracle is life springing from non-life. So they've got kind of got answers. They invoke lots of trickery as far as I'm concerned, but this one they don't have an answer for. How did life come from non-life? They're saying there was a primordial soup and lightning struck it, and come on, brother. A bacteria, yeah, is more complex than any machine that we've ever built. A bacteria. Maybe even an amino acid. I'm getting it over my head now, but a bacteria has some of the most complex mechanisms contained within it. And we're supposed to think that it's all accidental. It all came from nowhere. Entropy, like the law of everything that we see around us, is reversing and flipping and changing. We got rocks giving birth to organic matter, and then you've got organic matter becoming life. Non-life becoming life. And that's where you get into the questions of souls and essences and whatever else. But as far as I'm concerned, none of that, you have to ask me to entertain such an insane amount of coincidences along the way that, sorry. I'm not doing it. I can't do that. You're going to have to do better. As far as I can tell, there's only two options. It's accidental. Everything came about accidentally. And then you've got the fine-tuning problem on your hands, which is, why is everything so perfect? Why is a human being's eye so complex? Huh? Look at, if you're a parent, take your child and look at them in the eyeball. Look at their eye. Look at the complex little microscopic things that are going on there. Watch the pupil dilate, and you're telling me that was an accident from 30 billion trillion years ago, and it's all just been a domino effect since then, bro? Really? Look at ants marching in order. Look at trees. Look at blades of grass. It's just too perfect. You want me to think that came about by accident? And then they start invoking things like string theory, infinite universes. Bro, that doesn't do anything. Just because you keep kicking the can down the road doesn't mean you escape the big question. It all has to come back to a singular point. Tell me how that's not right. It all has to come back to a singular point. That's why they have Big Bang. It's the replacement for God. They deify this scientific process and pretend like it can somehow, why would it be small? Why? Small, and then it expands. Why did it start expanding? And then they always want to say, well, what about before God? What about before the Big Bang? Bro, you think you can just invoke these time horizons and big scale and big numbers and then you just escape these big questions? Nah. Who created God? God is outside time and outside space. He's not bound to this. It has to go back to a singular point. You can jujitsu and gymnastics your way around it as long as you want, but at the end of the day, it has to go back to a singular point, and the singular point is infinity. It's inconceivable to a human mind. Guess what? By design. It's not meant to be conceivable. So, I think that's my rant for today. As you can see, I feel passionately about that. It's just sensical. I just can't make heads or tail of it. I was 5 years old, asking my mom, "What are you talking about? Big Bang? What is that?" Not that she, pushed it. Nobody like that. It's just a nonsensical concept. Big Bang. Why? How do explosions, how do expansions start to become anything, let alone everything, and then this perfect design and order? Bro, you can chuck all the math you want at my face. It's not going to make that make sense. So yeah, I'm done. I'm done for today. Let me know what you guys think. I want to hear. Still, I want to hear. I'm speaking dramatically, but I want to hear your feedback. If I've missed something, let me know. I know I've butchered some of these things, brother. Give me a break. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a scientist, but I understand the scientific method. I understand basic logic. I understand reason. I understand how to logically follow a path. And this doesn't fit. You can apply maths. It doesn't fit still. So give me your best shot. I look forward to hearing the feedback. God bless.